Through?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Hang on 1 second.
Thank you.
Dana, I've got Kristen, the director of the Giannis film, on the line with us.
Thank you so much for speaking to me.
Hello. Hi. How are ya?
I'm doing great. This was superb. I loved what you was able to do with this. And there are so many different themes within this movie. But I was really interesting. You ended up both American culture, Greek culture, their lives. Can you talk about blending basically like two worlds into one?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you for picking up on all of that. When we first started production on this, it was really, really important after all of the research and reading that we had done on Giannis and his family's journey that we really captured what life was like for he and his family, both in Athens and in Milwaukee. Like those are the two places that they consider home. And so, our filming took place, I would say we went to Greece 4 times over the last 2 years. So we did a lot of filming in Greece and in Milwaukee. And I just felt like in order to really capture like who he is and kind of what makes him tick and how they kind of went from the streets of Athens to this unlikely home in Milwaukee, that it was really, really important to make both cities like a character, Athens and Milwaukee, in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, we had to be there and really like live and breathe and capture the beauty and all of the things that those two cities really like encapsulate, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it was really, really important to kind of create, make those two cities characters in the movie.
What I love is this is a story about Giannis, but without Giannis, there's no family and vice versa. So it's really about the entire family in a way. How do you go about balancing where everyone gets a time to shine, but yet Giannis is still the driving factor?
Yeah, I mean, early conversations with him, right? Because, honesty is built up over time. Mm-hmm. And so the first meeting I ever had with him, he said to me, he was like, this is not my story. This is my family's story. I'm not doing this and I don't, without my brothers and my mom and my fiance, like, by my side. And I just thought that was so unique because, in sports docs and in biopics, it's like, yes, you have like family members that will do interviews, but like the emphasis is not on them. And I just felt like this was a collective journey. And like, he really feels like this is as much Thanasis' story and Alex's story as it is his. And so thank you for picking up on that, because it was really important to me that like, when we tell a story about their childhood, that like all of the brothers were having opportunities to weigh in. And it creates this like, this really endearing thing that it's like they're almost like completing each other's sentences. Like they all have the same memories and they're kind of like jumping off of one another in telling those stories. And something we did when we conducted the interviews was we actually would show, like, for example, Giannis, a clip from his brother Alex's interview, or Thanasis, a clip from his brother Kostas's interview, in order to kind of help them understand what their brothers are saying about, the same exact experience, and then being able to add onto that. So I thought that worked really well and allowed them to kind of open up in a way that maybe they wouldn't have if they hadn't seen kind of their brothers talking about the same things, if that makes sense.
Right, it does. There are different philosophies that's used throughout this documentary. How did you use that to be both kind of the guiding force of which each chapter and also in the editing process?
Yeah. So for the chapter kind of graphics and animations, and we chose 3 words, right, from the Greek language that kind of represented the 3 acts of the movie and various chapters of Giannis's life. For me, I'm a Greek American. The Greek language is so fascinating and beautiful to me because it's like they have these like single words that basically don't have direct translations, right, to English. Like they mean so much. They're like feelings and it's just like this really complex kind of like, the word philotimo. It's like, it's translated directly to loyalty, but like not really. It means like, being a host and being warm and caring and, treating one's family with respect. Like, there's just so much that comes with these, like, words are so loaded. And so I felt like it was a really a fascinating lens to look at his story through because, again, like, he is wiser from, beyond his years, and he is such a philosophical person. And I think that the Greek language does that and kind of captures these, like, very unique moments in his life in a really, I don't know, magical way. And so that's why we use the chapters. And I'm sorry, I forgot the other part of your question.
No. You answered it pretty much. I was saying, like, how did you use that as the guiding force too in the editing process and also as chapter breaks?
Yeah, so, like, again, like the word exeno, right? Like, exeno is foreigner, but it also means not being accepted in one's home. Like, and that was, like, again, it's a really complex sentiment, but it is absolutely what Giannis and his family went through when they were in Greece as undocumented immigrants. Like, that idea of exeno. And we actually in the interviews said each of the three words to the four boys, and we asked them, like, if I say this word, what do you think of? And I feel like that really also garnered, like, a lot of powerful sound. And it also, brought to life, like, okay, we definitely have to use these words as our guiding kind of light and force throughout the film. And it all just kind of worked out nicely. And again, like you said, Greece and the Greek language are characters in the movie. So I thought it was really important to make sure that was incorporated.
Right. What I love is this is a combination of both philosophy and also psychology, you can argue, because the whole existence of fear not existing. And so, with that being the guiding force, I wanted to know, he views challenges as basically goals. So, with that approach, how do you kind of get into the mindset of Giannis, especially when he has these terrible moments that do occur in his life?
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly really shocked with how much he went into the passing of his dad. Like, I had no idea going into the interview whether he was going to feel comfortable at all kind of talking about that. It's something that he hasn't really talked about, in the media or, in public at all. And I think, having been 5+ years removed from the horrible, tragedy of his father's passing, I think he's had the space and time to kind of reflect a little bit. And it was, like, the most pivotal kind of moment in his career and, kind of how he evolved as a man in that moment. And, to your point, like, he's so wise beyond his years. Like, I've never met a 27, 28-year-old who can, verbalize that really complex feeling of, like, having a loved one pass away. Anyone who's felt that knows that, like, once that happens, there's really not much else that you do fear, right? Because it is like you've hit a low point. And from there, basketball, things that they all seem much more trivial. And it's like now I can kind of reach my potential because I'm no longer afraid because, the worst possible thing in life that could have happened. And it was almost like this, like, kind of freeing feeling for him. And I just found that to be so fascinating. Again, it surprised me. I had no idea that that's how he felt. And that's, like, the biggest thing with this movie is, like, people knew the broad strokes of he and his family's story, but it never came from their perspective and through their lens and their words. And so that's what surprised me the most was, like, I went in with so much research, but everything that came out of Giannis's mouth in our interview was new information to me. And I got really excited because I felt like if I was thinking that way, then the audience would feel that way as well.
By getting these interviews and kind of making it about Giannis in his own words, was that kind of the guiding factor of how you knew this was going to be more original than what we've seen before?
I hoped. I mean, as, like, a storyteller and filmmaker, like, you hope that you're not, that people aren't walking away like, oh, I already knew that, right? Like, that's like your biggest fear. I knew based on the conversations I had with him off camera early on that he's just a different guy. And, like, when he really lets his guard down, he is emotional and wise and authentic. And I think that's what separates this movie from maybe some other sports docs. He's like, he really just let it go. He was himself, like he was honest. His family was super honest. And I think when people decide to let their guard down, that's when like you really get powerful sound and powerful story.
Right. By Giannis being able to kind of really let his guard down, did that take the documentary into a different area which you didn't plan on originally?
Yes, 1000%. I had no idea that he was going to talk about his experiences with the Golden Dawn and racism in Greece as a child. Like, I had no idea. He had never publicly spoken about it. It was documented by other people, but he had never gone there. And so that was really surprising to me. I mean, he gets emotional in the film when he's talking about, protecting his brothers. I was really taken back by that moment. Again, the death of his dad, I had no idea if he was going to go there. He had never spoken about it publicly. And, again, I think that like we interviewed his fiance and Alex and Thanasis before we interviewed Giannis. And I think him seeing that they were able to open up and go there on some of the difficult topics kind of made him feel like it's okay. And again, we showed him clips from Alex, Thanasis, and Mariah's interviews throughout his and had him react to that sound. And I think that almost allowed him to open up in a way that maybe he wouldn't have, just seeing that it was safe to go there and that his family had also gone there on some difficult topics.
Oh, I'm fascinated by that. So then, was the goal to kind of use the base as his friends and family in order to get the meat of the documentary, and then for him to expound upon that as the core?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you always go back and forth on when you want to do the primary subjects interview. I feel like it's important to do it like almost at the 50-yard line, like halfway through the process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do a few interviews beforehand to get some context from people that are really close to him, and then also do some interviews after the fact, after you get the primary, after you get Giannis's interview, to help kind of expound on some things that he says. So I think it's good to do it like halfway through the process, and that is what we did. So we did two master interviews with him. One was in April of 2022, and the other one was in September of 2023. So there's like the white backdrop in the Museum of Art in Milwaukee, and then there's like the black backdrop, which is like in his home. And again, I felt like we did that purposely also. Like, we started in like the big epic space for like the first time we sit down with him. But then after we've gained his trust and we've gone a little more intimate with him, we've conducted the second interview at his home.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to me. This was very good. This was so good. I loved every moment of
Oh,
this.
you're very, very sweet. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.